If you still want me, come get me. I stared at the words on my phone like they belonged to someone braver than me, someone reckless enough to burn her life down 2 hours before walking down the aisle. But my thumb was already hovering over send, and my heart was already too far gone to turn back. The bridal suite smelled like hairspray and white roses and something else I couldn't name. Something tight and suffocating that wrapped around my chest with every breath. My reflection in the mirror didn't look like a bride. It looked like a stranger dressed in lace and expectations. My hands trembled as I adjusted the thin strap on my shoulder. The diamond necklace resting against my collarbone felt heavier than it should, like it carried promises I never agreed to keep. Outside the door, I could hear soft laughter, the low hum of voices, the sound of a wedding already in motion, already decided, already too late to stop. Except it wasn't too late. Not yet. Not if he came. Not if he still wanted me the way he said he did that night. The memory hit me without warning, his voice low, controlled, dangerous in a way that didn't need to be loud. Don't call me unless you mean it. And I didn't mean it then. I was scared then. But now I wasn't sure if what I felt was fear or something sharper, something closer to truth. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady the shaking in my chest, trying to convince myself this was insane. That texting him, of all people, was the worst decision I could make. But the alternative was worse, standing at that altar, saying words I didn't believe, tying myself to a life that felt like a quiet kind of disappearing. I glanced at the clock on the wall, 10:07 a.m. Less than 2 hours until everything became permanent. My phone screen dimmed slightly as if it was giving me a chance to change my mind. But I didn't. I couldn't. My thumb pressed down and the message sent with a soft, irreversible pulse. And just like that, there was no taking it back. The room felt colder somehow. Or maybe it was just me. My pulse thudded in my ears as I stared at the screen, waiting for those 3 dots, waiting for something, anything. But nothing came. No reply. No acknowledgement. Just silence stretching longer than it should, longer than I could handle. I swallowed hard and set the phone down on the vanity like it might burn me if I held it too long. What had I just done? What if he didn't come? What if he ignored it? What if he had already moved on? The thought hit harder than I expected, sharper than it should have, and I hated that it mattered. I hated that he mattered. I turned back to the mirror, forcing myself to breathe, to focus, to pretend everything was still normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. Not the dress, not the room, not the life waiting for me outside that door, somewhere across the city. He had my message now. Somewhere he had seen my name light up his screen, and I couldn't stop the quiet, dangerous hope that whispered through me like a secret. He's coming. And if he did, if he actually came, then everything was about to change. The minutes stretched in a way that made time feel heavier, like each second carried weight, pressing down on my chest as I tried to breathe normally. But nothing about this felt normal anymore. My phone stayed silent on the vanity, the screen dark, unreadable, as if it was deliberately refusing to tell me whether I had just changed my life or ruined it. I picked it up again, then set it down, then picked it up again. My fingers cold despite the warm lights surrounding me. I checked the message. Still delivered, still no reply. And something inside me twisted, a quiet panic that I refused to name. Maybe he had seen it and chosen not to answer. Maybe he had read it and dismissed it as another mistake I would regret by the end of the day. Maybe he had already decided I was not worth the trouble. The thought stung more than I expected, more than it should have, because I had been the one to walk away first. I had been the one who chose the safe life, the predictable life, the life that made sense to everyone except me. A soft knock at the door broke through my thoughts. Gentle but firm. "Emily, honey, are you decent?" My mother's voice carried warmth and expectation. I swallowed quickly and forced my voice steady. "Yes, come in." The door opened and she stepped inside. Her smile immediate, proud, her eyes scanning me from head to toe like she was trying to memorize this moment. "You look beautiful," she said, and I nodded. Because that was the right response. Because that was what this moment required. But the word beautiful felt distant, like it belonged to someone else entirely. She moved closer, adjusting a loose strand of hair near my temple, her touch gentle, familiar, grounding in a way that made everything harder. "Are you nervous?" she asked softly, and I almost laughed, because nervous felt like too small a word for what was happening inside me. but I nodded anyway. A little, I said, keeping it simple, keeping it safe. She smiled again, the kind of smile that carried years of belief, of trust in the choices that led us here. That is normal, she said. This is a big day. A big day, the biggest day. The kind of day that was supposed to define the rest of my life. I glanced at the clock again, 10:19 a.m. Time was moving whether I was ready or not, whether he answered or not, whether anything changed or not. You picked a good man, she continued, her voice softening. Daniel will take care of you. I nodded again, because arguing now would only open doors I could not close. Daniel was good, kind, steady, everything a person should want, everything I was supposed to want. But when I tried to picture the future with him, it felt quiet in the wrong way, like something essential was missing. Like I was stepping into a life where I would slowly fade instead of grow. My phone buzzed suddenly, sharp and unexpected, cutting through the room like a crack in glass. My heart jumped so hard it almost hurt. My mother did not notice at first, still adjusting the veil behind my shoulders. But I had already turned, already reached for the phone with fingers that trembled more than before. The screen lit up in my hand. One new message. No name needed because I knew exactly who it was before I even read it. My breath caught as I opened it. Just 3 words. Nothing more, nothing less. I am coming. And everything inside me went still, not calm, not safe, just still, like the world had paused to. Let those words settle. My mother's voice faded into the background as she said something about the schedule, about guests arriving, about the ceremony starting soon. But I could not hear her. Not really, because those 3 words echoed louder than anything else. I am coming. Not a question, not hesitation, just certainty, just a decision made without asking anything in return. I looked back at my reflection in the mirror, and for the first time that morning, the stranger looking back at me felt a little more real, a little more awake, and a quiet, dangerous thought slipped through my mind before I could stop it. I did not know how this would end. I did not know what it would cost, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I was not the same person who had woken up this morning, and neither was the life waiting for me outside that door. The words stayed on the screen long after my mother left the room, long after the door clicked softly behind her and the noise of the hallway faded back into a distant hum. I am coming. I read it again, slower this time, as if the meaning might change, as if there might be something hidden between those 3 words that I missed the first time. But there was nothing else, no reassurance, no explanation, just certainty. And somehow that was enough to make my pulse race harder than before. I pressed the phone to my chest for a second, closing my eyes as a memory surfaced without warning. The first time I saw him, not at a party or a crowded room, but somewhere quieter, somewhere that felt too still for someone like him to exist in. I had been leaving a late shift, the parking lot nearly empty, the air cool against my skin, and he was there, leaning against a black car like he had been waiting, not for me specifically, but for something inevitable, something that had not happened. Yet, I remember thinking he did not belong there, not in that ordinary place, not in a world that moved at a slower, safer pace. His presence had felt like a disruption, like a shadow where there should have been light, and when his eyes found mine, it was not curiosity I saw, it was recognition, like he already knew something about me that I had not figured out yet. You are in the wrong place, he had said, his voice low, controlled, not unkind but not gentle either, and I had laughed nervously, brushing it off, telling him he did not know anything about me. But he had just tilted his head slightly, studying me in a way that made me feel seen in a way I was not ready for. No, he said quietly. You are pretending this is where you belong. And I remember the way that sentence stayed with me long after I walked away. The way it echoed in moments when everything felt too quiet, too predictable, too safe. I opened my eyes and looked at myself in the mirror again. The dress still perfect, the makeup untouched, everything exactly as it should be, except for the way my expression had changed. There was something sharper there now, something awake. I glanced at the clock, 10:34 a.m. Time was slipping faster now, like it knew something I did not, like it was counting down to a moment that could not be undone. My phone remained in my hand, the message thread open, his words still the last one sent. I am coming. And I wondered what that actually meant, how far he was, what he would do when he got here, if he would walk through the front doors like nothing could stop him, or if he would wait, watching, deciding whether I was worth the disruption I had just invited into both our lives. A soft knock came again, lighter this time, followed by my best friend's voice. They are asking for you downstairs. In 20 minutes, I inhaled slowly, forcing my voice to stay steady. Okay, I will be there. My reflection held my gaze as the silence returned, and for a moment, everything narrowed down to a single, quiet truth. I had asked him to come, but I had not decided yet what I would do when he did, and that uncertainty settled into my chest like something heavy and real, because choosing to call him was one thing, but choosing him, fully, completely, with everything it would cost, that was something else entirely. And as I stood there, dressed for a future that no longer felt certain, I realized that the next time I saw him, I would not be able to hide behind hesitation anymore. I would have to answer the question I had been avoiding for far too long, not just whether he wanted me, but whether I was ready to step into a world that would never let me go. The hallway felt longer than it should have as I stepped out of the bridal suite, my heels sinking softly into the carpet with each careful step, the sound muted but steady, like a countdown I could not escape. Voices drifted toward me from downstairs, warm and cheerful, the kind of happiness that assumed everything was going exactly as planned. I kept my posture straight, my expression calm, because that was what everyone expected. That was what this day required. But inside, everything felt different now, sharper, more fragile, like one wrong breath could break the illusion completely. My fingers brushed against my phone hidden in the folds of my dress, a quiet reminder that something had already shifted, something irreversible. I reached the top of the staircase and paused for just a second, looking down at the room below filled with familiar faces, friends, family, people who had watched me grow into this version of myself, the version that was supposed to walk forward without hesitation. Daniel stood near the front, talking with his best man, his smile easy, genuine, the kind of smile that came from certainty, from believing the future was already decided. He looked good, exactly like he should on a day like this, composed, confident, ready, and for a moment, guilt pressed against my chest, heavy and quiet, because he had done nothing wrong. Not once, not ever. He had been patient, kind, steady in all the ways that should have been enough. I started down the stairs. Slowly, each step deliberate, measured, the soft music playing somewhere in the background, blending with the low conversations. Everything felt surreal, like I was moving through a scene that had already been written. My best friend caught my eye from across the room, her expression bright before it softened slightly, like she could see something in my face that I had not said out loud. "You okay?" she mouthed, and I nodded automatically. Because explaining was not an option, not here, not now. I reached Daniel's side and he turned toward me, his eyes lighting up instantly, the way they always did. "Hey," he said gently, his voice warm, grounding. "You look incredible." I smiled because that was expected, because it was easier than anything else. "Thank you," I replied, keeping my voice steady. He reached for my hand, his touch familiar, reassuring, but it did not settle the storm inside me. It only made me more aware of it. "We are almost there," he said quietly, leaning in just enough so only I could hear. "In about an hour, you will officially be stuck with me," he added with a soft laugh, and I forced a small smile in return. But the words echoed differently in my mind. Stuck. The word lingered longer than it should have, heavier than it was meant to be. I glanced toward the entrance without meaning to. Just a quick look, just a reflex. But my heart reacted instantly, a sharp, sudden beat that made me inhale too quickly. Nothing had changed yet. The doors were still closed, the outside world still separated from this one by glass and distance. But something in the air felt different, subtle but undeniable. Like the quiet before a shift. I pulled my hand gently from Daniel's, pretending to adjust my dress, needing a second, just a second to breathe. My phone vibrated again against my side, softer this time, almost like a whisper. I froze for half a second before slipping it into my hand, my pulse rising as I checked the screen. Another message, no hesitation this time, no delay, just a single line that made everything else fade into the background. 10 minutes. I read it once, then again, my throat tightening as the meaning settled in. 10 minutes, not a question, not a warning, just a fact. I lifted my gaze slowly toward the entrance again, and this time, I did not look away, because somewhere beyond those doors, he was already on his way, and whether I was ready or not, the moment I had set into motion was about to arrive. 10 minutes sounded like nothing until I felt each one pass through me like a slow, deliberate heartbeat, stretching time in a way that made every second sharper, louder, impossible to ignore. I slipped my phone back into the folds of my dress, my fingers lingering there for just a moment as if holding onto it could somehow anchor me. But nothing felt stable anymore. Everything was shifting beneath the surface, subtle but undeniable. I lifted my gaze again and forced myself to move, to smile when someone approached, to nod when spoken to exist inside this moment that was still expected to unfold exactly as planned. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. Counting, measuring, waiting. 5 minutes passed in what felt like both an instant and a lifetime. Conversations blurred into background noise. Laughter sounded distant, like it belonged to another world I was no longer fully part of. My best friend appeared at my side again, her expression more searching this time. "You are really quiet," she said softly, her voice careful, like she was stepping around something fragile. I managed a small smile. "Just taking it all in," I replied, the words automatic, practiced, but she did not look convinced. Her eyes lingered on mine for a second longer before she nodded slowly, as if deciding not to push. "If you need anything, I am right here," she said, and I nodded, grateful and guilty at the same time, because what I needed was not something she could give me, not something anyone in this room could understand. Another glance at the clock, 10:43 a.m. The numbers felt heavier now, more real, each minute pulling me closer to something I could not step away from. Daniel touched my arm gently, drawing my attention back to him. "They are getting ready to start seating everyone," he said, his tone calm, reassuring, everything about him steady in a way that should have grounded me. "Are you okay?" he added, his eyes searching mine with genuine concern, and for a brief second, I almost told him the truth, almost let the words slip out before I could stop them, but I swallowed them instead, forcing a nod. "Yes, I am fine," I said quietly, and he smiled, relieved, trusting, the kind of trust that made everything inside me tighten, because he believed in a future that I was no longer sure I could give him. The music shifted slightly, signaling movement, signaling that the ceremony was drawing closer. Guests began to take their seats, the room slowly reorganizing itself into something more formal, more final. I stepped back slightly, needing space, needing air, my chest rising and falling a little faster now, the world narrowing down to the sound of my own breathing and the distant echo of those two words still looping in my mind. 10 minutes. I turned my head toward the entrance again, unable to stop myself this time, unable to pretend it did not matter. The glass doors stood tall and still, reflecting the room behind me. But beyond them, something felt different, the light shifting slightly, the air changing in a way that made my instincts sharpen, like the moment before a storm when everything goes quiet in a way that feels unnatural. My pulse quickened, not from fear alone, but from anticipation, from the realization that I had set something unstoppable into motion, that he was not someone who hesitated, not someone who ignored a call like that. And if he said he was coming, then he would be here, exactly when he said he would. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself as best as I could, because there was no more time to question, no more time to second guess. The next few minutes would decide everything, not just for me, but for everyone standing in this room. And as the final minute approached, I felt it clearly, a quiet, undeniable shift in the air, like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to walk through those doors. The final minute did not feel like a minute at all. It felt like a held breath that refused to release. The music softened as guests settled into their seats, the quiet growing heavier, more expectant, and I could feel every pair of eyes shifting toward the aisle where I was supposed to walk in just moments. My hands felt colder now, the delicate fabric of my dress brushing against my skin as I adjusted it without thinking, a small, automatic movement to keep myself grounded. Daniel stepped slightly ahead, guided by the officiant, his posture straight, his expression calm, everything about him exactly where it should be, and for a second, I watched him like I was seeing him from a distance, like I was already stepping outside the life we had planned together. My chest tightened at the thought, not from doubt about him, but from the weight of what I was about to change. The room fell quieter, the kind of silence that carried anticipation. The doors at the back still closed, still separating this moment from whatever was coming next. I told myself to focus, to breathe, to move forward when the music signaled it was time. But my body did not respond the way it should. It hesitated, just slightly, just enough for me to notice. And in that hesitation, everything felt clearer than it had all day. I was standing at the edge of two lives, one already built, safe, expected, and one unknown, unpredictable, impossible to control, and I had already made the choice that set the second one into motion. A faint sound reached the room, barely noticeable at first, the distant hum of engines outside, low and controlled, not loud, not disruptive, but deliberate in a way that made something shift in the air. A few heads turned subtly toward the entrance, not understanding yet, just reacting to the change. My pulse quickened instantly, my body recognizing before my mind could catch up. He was here. The realization settled through me with a strange kind of calm, not panic, not fear, but certainty. The doors remained closed for one more second, then another, the silence stretching just enough to make the moment feel suspended. And then they opened, not abruptly, not dramatically, just enough to let the outside light spill into the room, and with it, him. Adrian stepped inside like he belonged there, like every space adjusted itself around his presence without question, his expression unreadable, controlled, his gaze moving once across the room before finding me. And when it did, everything else disappeared. The noise, the people, the expectations, all of it faded into something distant and irrelevant. There was no rush in his movement, no urgency, just intention, each step measured, steady, like he had already decided the outcome long before he arrived. I felt my breath catch, my body still, rooted in place as the reality of what I had done fully settled in. He was here because I asked him to be, because I chose to call him into this moment, into this life, and now there was no space left for doubt. The room seemed to hold its breath, the shift undeniable now. Every guest aware that something was not unfolding the way it was supposed to. Daniel turned slightly, confusion flickering across his face as he followed the direction of the room's attention. But I did not look at him. I could not, because my focus was entirely on the man walking toward me, the one who had never belonged to the safe version of my life, the one who represented everything uncertain and real at the same time. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the exact moment his eyes softened just slightly. Not weakness, not hesitation, just recognition. Like he was confirming something he already knew. And in that silence between us, filled with everything unspoken, one truth settled deeper than anything else. I had called him here, but standing in front of him now, I understood that the real decision had not been sending the message. The real decision was what I would do next, because he had come exactly as he promised, and now he was waiting, not for permission, but for my choice. No one spoke at first. The silence stretched between us thick and fragile, like the entire room was waiting for someone else to break it, but neither of us moved, neither of us looked away. Adrian's gaze held mine with a steady intensity that made everything else feel distant, unreal. I could feel the weight of every person in the room shifting, whispering without words, trying to understand what they were seeing. But none of that mattered in this moment. Not the guests, not the ceremony, not even the life I had been about to step into. Daniel's voice cut through the stillness, uncertain at first. "Emily," he said, my name sounding different now, heavier, like it carried a question he was not ready to ask out loud. I turned slightly toward him, just enough to acknowledge him, just enough to feel the pull of everything I was about to leave behind. His expression had changed, confusion giving way to something more guarded, more aware. His eyes moved between me and Adrian, searching for an explanation that I had not given, that I did not know how to give. "What is going on?" he asked quietly, not angry, not yet, just trying to understand, and that made it harder, because there was no simple answer, no easy way to explain the choice I had made. I looked back at Adrian, because that was where the truth was, not in words, but in the space between us, in the way he had come without hesitation, without question, like my message had been enough, like I had been enough. He took one step closer, not invading, not forcing, just closing the distance enough to make the moment real. undeniable. His voice when he spoke was low, controlled, but softer than I expected. "Are you leaving?" he asked, not demanding, not assuming, just asking the one question that mattered, and I felt it settle into me, deeper than anything else had all day. This was the moment, not the text, not the waiting, not his arrival. This, standing here with everything exposed, everything uncertain, everything at risk. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, my hands trembling slightly at my sides, and for a brief second, fear tried to surface. Fear of what would happen next, fear of the unknown, fear of stepping into a world I did not fully understand. But beneath that fear was something stronger, something clearer, something that had been growing quietly for longer than I realized. I turned fully toward him now, the room fading even further into the background, Daniel's presence still there, still real, but no longer the center of my world. "No," I said softly, my voice steadier than I expected, and I saw the flicker of confusion in Adrian's eyes, just for a second, like he was recalculating, like he was adjusting to an answer he did not expect. But I did not stop there. I took a small step forward, closing the distance between us in a way that felt like crossing a line I could never step back over. "I am not leaving," I continued, the words settling with more certainty as I spoke them. "I am choosing." The silence that followed was different now, not uncertain, not fragile, but charged with something undeniable, something final. Adrian held my gaze for a long moment, something unreadable, passing through his expression before it settled back into that controlled calm. But I saw it. The shift, the acknowledgement, the understanding. Daniel exhaled sharply behind me, the sound quiet but heavy, and I knew without turning that this was the moment everything changed for him too, for all of us. But I could not go back. Not after this. Not after choosing something real over something safe. Adrian extended his hand slightly, not forcing, not pulling, just offering, and I looked at it for a second, knowing that taking it meant stepping into a life I could not predict, a life that would challenge everything I thought I knew, but also a life that felt undeniably mine. And without letting myself hesitate again, I placed my hand in his, the contact steady, grounding, and in that single, quiet movement, the future I had been walking toward disappeared behind me, replaced by something unknown, something dangerous in its own way, but something that felt more honest than anything I had ever chosen before. The moment my hand settled in his, the world did not explode into chaos the way I imagined. It did something quieter, something more unsettling. It shifted, like every expectation in that room cracked at once without making a sound. Adrian's grip was steady, warm, not tight, not possessive, just certain, like he had already accepted what this meant the second I reached for him. The air around us felt heavier now, filled with unspoken reactions, with disbelief, with questions that no one dared to voice out loud. But I could feel them, pressing in from every direction. My name was said again, softer this time, almost like it was being let go instead of held on to. I did not turn, not because I did not care, but because I knew if I looked back, I might hesitate, and hesitation was the one thing I could not afford anymore. Adrian did not rush me, did not pull me forward. He simply stood there, giving me the space to stand in my decision, to feel the full weight of it without trying to shield me from it. And somehow that made everything clearer, more real. I took a breath that felt deeper than any I had taken all day, and then another, grounding myself in the choice I had just made. "Emily." My mother's voice came from somewhere behind me, shaken, uncertain, not angry but not understanding either. And that hurt more than anything else, because I had never wanted to be the reason for that tone in her voice. I closed my eyes for half a second, just long enough to steady myself, then opened them again, still facing forward, still standing beside the man I had chosen. "I am okay," I said quietly, not turning around, not explaining, just offering the only truth I could give in this moment, because anything more would unravel everything. The silence that followed felt different now, less shocked, more resigned, like the room was beginning to accept that this was really happening, that this was not a misunderstanding or a moment that could be corrected. Adrian shifted slightly beside me, not closer, not further, just enough to signal that he was ready to move whenever I was. And I felt that too, the pull forward, the quiet invitation to leave everything behind and step into something new. I glanced at him briefly, meeting his eyes again, searching for something, reassurance, doubt, anything, but all I found was the same steady certainty he had walked in with, the same quiet understanding that this was my choice, not his command, and that mattered more than anything else, because it meant I was not being taken, I was going, and there was a difference I could finally feel. I turned slightly then, just enough to look back at the room one last time, at the people who had shaped the life I was stepping away from. My best friend stood frozen, her expression a mix of shock and something deeper, something like reluctant understanding. My mother's eyes were filled with questions she had not asked yet, and Daniel, still standing where I had left him, his posture unchanged, but his expression no longer certain, no longer steady, just quiet, like he was processing something he could not yet name. I held that moment for exactly one breath, letting it settle, letting it become real. Then I turned back forward, because there was no more space left for looking back. Adrian's hand remained in mine as we took the first step together, slow, deliberate. Not rushed, not hidden, just honest, the sound of our movement soft against the floor, but it carried through the silence like something final, something undeniable, and as we moved toward the doors, toward the light waiting beyond them, one thought settled deeper than anything else, not fear, not regret, but clarity. I had not been taken from my life. I had stepped out of it, and for the first time, the direction I was walking in felt entirely my own. The doors opened wider as we approached, the light outside spilling across the polished floor in a way that felt almost unreal, like stepping into something brighter than I was used to, something I had not fully prepared myself for. The air changed the moment we crossed the threshold, cooler, clearer, carrying the faint scent of the outside world that had been waiting just beyond those walls. And for the first time since this day began, I felt like I could breathe without forcing it. Adrian did not let go of my hand as we stepped out together, not tightening his grip, not guiding me, just staying there, steady and present, like a constant I could choose to hold on to or release at any moment. The sound behind us softened as the doors closed, not completely shutting out the life I had left, but separating it enough to make this moment feel distinct, final in its own quiet way. I exhaled slowly, the weight of everything settling into something more manageable, not gone, not forgotten, but transformed into clarity instead of confusion. The line of black cars waited just ahead, still, composed, a reflection of the man beside me. Everything about this world felt different, more deliberate, less forgiving in some ways, but also more honest. I glanced at him, studying the profile I had only ever seen in fragments before, the calm control, the quiet confidence, the absence of hesitation. "You came," I said softly, the words simple but carrying everything I could not fully express. Yet, he turned his head slightly, his gaze meeting mine with that same steady intensity. "You asked," he replied, just as simple, just as certain, like nothing else needed to be explained. I let out a small breath that almost felt like a laugh. Not from humor, but from the realization of how much had changed in such a short time. "I did not think you would," I admitted, the truth slipping out before I could filter it. And something shifted in his expression, not offense, not surprise, just a quiet acknowledgement. "I always come when it matters," he said, his voice low. Not a promise, not a warning, just a statement of who he was, and for the first time, I believed it without question. I looked ahead again, at the path in front of us, at the life I had stepped into without a map, without guarantees, and instead of fear, there was something else, something steadier, something that felt like ownership, like this choice, no matter how unpredictable, was mine, completely, and without apology. Adrian opened the car door, but did not move until I did, giving me that final second, that last chance to reconsider, to step back, to return to what was safe and familiar. But I did not hesitate this time. I stepped forward, sliding into the seat with a calm I had not felt all day, and as he closed the door and moved around to the other side, I leaned back slightly, letting the quiet settle around me. The world outside the window still the same, the streets unchanged, the sky exactly as it had been this morning, but everything felt different now, because I was different. The car started smoothly, the movement gentle as we pulled away, and I did not look back, not at the building, not at the life I had left inside it, because I did not need to anymore. Adrian sat beside me, his presence steady, grounding, and for a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence between us not empty, but full of something unspoken, something still unfolding. I turned slightly toward him, meeting his gaze one more time, and this time, there was no hesitation, no question, just certainty. "I meant it," I said quietly, and he held my gaze for a second before giving the smallest nod, like he had already known, like he had been waiting for me to realize it myself. The city moved around us as we drove, familiar streets taking on a different meaning, and as the distance between where I had been and where I was going grew wider, one thought settled. Deeper than anything else, not regret, not doubt, but something stronger, something that felt like truth. He did not take me from my world, and I did not escape into his. Somewhere between those two things, I chose a life that finally felt like it belonged to me.